Oh, good morning. Great to be back in Jacksonville here at Jacksonville International Airport. I have Larry Keefe is with me, who's our public safety czar, works in the governor's office. We have the mayor of Jacksonville, Lenny Curry's here, the CEO of the Jax AV. We have representatives Byrd and Yarborough. So I want to thank them for being here and thank them for supporting a lot of the efforts that we've had over the last few years. We were really happy to be able to put out a very strong budget yesterday, and I know when they get back into Tallahassee in January, they'll be working on doing a lot of the same stuff. But it is important to point out that we have a budget recommendation at like $99.7 billion. That's, by the way, less than half of what our closest state in population, New York, has, which is 3 million people fewer than us, and their budget's over twice the size. Yet we have better infrastructure, higher performing education system, and better quality of life, and with the lowest tax burden in the country per capita. But we have over $15 billion in reserves, and those are historic levels for the state of Florida. And if you look, when we do these budget recommendations, I got to take whatever revenue has come in up to this point, but then from December until the end of June, just for this fiscal year, for example, I'm relying on estimates of revenue. But if you look, we're above estimate month after month after month. And so if we're even on the low end of what we've been seeing in terms of additional revenue coming in December through the end of June, that's another probably $300 million a month over the estimates. So you could end up having another $2 billion. We could end up with $17 billion in reserves by the time the next fiscal year kicks off. And so all that's being said is, we're doing historic things in terms of what we're doing for public safety, what we're doing for our environmental resources, what we're doing for education and boosting teacher pay and all that. And that's all very, very important. But we're also doing that with keeping us strong and actually increasing our ability to handle things that happen in the future. And so we're proud to do that, and we look forward to working with the legislature on advancing a lot of these really important priorities for Florida. One of the priorities that we've been working on for many months now, and we'll continue to work with the legislature when they get back, is dealing with the fallout from the reckless border policies of the Biden administration. And about 5 months ago, I was asked by the governor of Texas to send some support because of what was happening at the southern border. You're having 200,000 people illegally enter every month. I mean, that's a medium-sized American city every month coming in illegally. And so we sent folks in state law enforcement, and they were there for a number of probably about 6 weeks, 8 weeks total. And they saw these people just pouring in. Many of them said that their ultimate destination was the state of Florida, so it obviously was affecting us, we could tell right off the bat. But what would happen was they would interdict someone coming illegally, turn them over to the feds, and then the feds would just put them on an airplane somewhere, put them on a bus, and then they would end up basically being ferreted around to different communities throughout the country. And we saw that tragically what happened with they're bringing in these flights into Jacksonville in the wee hours of the morning, no advance notice to the state. We don't know, they don't tell us anything. And you had somebody posing as a minor, who's actually about 24 years old, and ended up committing a murder. And again, if the border had been secured and if the policies weren't so reckless, that would not have happened. And we see this time and time again. And we also understand what's happening in terms of who this is benefiting. The cartels are just eating our lunch with what's going on with these border policies. I mean, they've never had it so good. You got drugs pouring across, you've got human trafficking coming, and there's obviously some of the people come in will also commit additional crimes, but just with that, the sheer number of people, there's a huge burden on communities when you talk about healthcare, schools, all this other stuff. So we filed suit against the Biden administration several months ago about challenging the catch and release policies. That case is still pending in the Northern District of Florida in the Pensacola division, but I will tell you, already we've seen movement. They filed a motion to dismiss our case, but in the motion they say they have actually changed their policy. What they had been doing when our guys were down there, they'd give them what's called a notice to report. And basically, it's like the honor system. Hey, you're here, you're going to have a hearing. Call this number and schedule your hearing, on your honor. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that that's how we did law enforcement here in Florida? Someone robs a bank and they just get a notice, hey, just call the prosecutor and schedule your trial whenever it makes sense for you. It's an honor system. That doesn't work. So they've acknowledged that they have replaced the notice to appear, or the notice to report, which is with what's called the notice to appear, which is important because if you don't show up when you have a notice to appear, then immediately you can be sent back without any additional process. And I don't think that would have happened if it wasn't for our efforts on really pushing the envelope on this and fighting back. So we'll see what's going to happen. There's a lot of other things in that case, and they've been able to do some stuff, but at a minimum, that's an important victory. But we realize we've got to do more. And so we're going to be proposing a series of legislative reforms that will help strengthen Florida's hand in fighting back against the Biden border crisis and what we've seen happening for almost the last year in terms of what's happening to our country. So we're going to propose a number of things. One, we're going to say to any of these contractors who are involved in ferreting people, whether it's buses, charter planes, what have you, any of those folks who are involved in facilitating this type of illegal migration in the state of Florida, they're going to be barred from doing any business with any state or local government agency in the state of Florida. We just cannot be doing contracts with companies that are knowingly and recklessly facilitating bringing people here into our state illegally. And I think that will be very, very important. We're also going to require that any private entity that's involved in facilitating illegal migration into Florida owes the state restitution for each person that they're facilitating, whether they're bringing, whether they're harboring, because this does cost, when you have huge numbers of people, that costs a lot of money for taxpayers in a variety of ways. I mean, just think, anytime you have an altercation with law enforcement, you have criminal cases, you have other issues with drugs, you have just normal things about healthcare and things that fall under the taxpayer. So every single person will be charged, the entities will have to provide restitution for the state of Florida. Number three, we're also going to strengthen our sanctuary cities law. We're going to make sure that if a local jurisdiction is not assisting state law enforcement in our investigation on whether somebody has been brought here illegally, that constitutes a sanctuary policy. And that makes sense. Now, before, when we did the Sanctuary Cities bill, we were dealing with the prospect of the federal government helping us. For example, when Trump was president, you had a criminal alien in a Florida state penitentiary. They served their sentence. ICE would pick them up and then they'd send them back. Biden they don't really do that. I mean, sometimes they'll do it now because there's been some pressure, but a lot of times they will release these people. That was not happening previously. Now we're in a different situation where we need all entities in Florida helping to fight back against the federal government's ineptitude and inaction. So that'll be important to strengthen. We're also going to strengthen E-Verify enforcement by adding Department of Economic Opportunity as an agency eligible to conduct enforcement. We're going to provide resources. We're going to provide money to be able to do it. What we don't want is incentivizing people to be coming to the state illegally. And we also, in yesterday's budget, I put in $8 million for us to be able to transport people illegally out of the state of Florida. Now, we had mentioned, I said, it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but it is true. If you sent to Delaware or Martha's Vineyard or some of these places, that border would be secure the next day. That border would be secure. But instead, they're imposing the results of their policies on states like Florida, who they love to hate or whatever. But we are going to provide that opportunity, and I think that could potentially make a difference. We want to know if somebody is committing criminal activity, if they're arrested, or certainly if they're convicted. We want to know whether they are here illegally. That matters. That matters for adjudicating these policies. It matters for the costs that are imposed on our state. We are going to have the sheriffs participate in the 287G program. Most of them do in the state of Florida, but not all of them do. But it's really, really important that we're all on the same page on this. We're also going to make sure that when people are convicted, that this is reflected on their court records, whether they are here in the country illegally. And this is going to be reported to FDLE, and it's going to be put on a public website. This way people can know, because these guys work hard, Mike and these other folks throughout the Florida, they work really hard to keep the community safe. There's obviously challenges that you have to deal with. But if someone's coming illegally and then they do commit a serious criminal offense, that would not have happened had they just enforced the law and secured the border. And so it's important to know how many of these crimes are easily preventable just by having enforcement of the law. So we're going to know that. Also going to make sure that there's no taxpayer benefits that are provided to anyone coming illegally, particularly facilitating any of the things that we're seeing from the southern border, and that'll be verification will be done by state agencies, and make sure that's basically already the law, but we want to make sure that we're checking all the boxes on that. And then finally, they issued today a new emergency rule about the illegal minors that are coming, and they're being sent to these places. And the problem is that it's much more lucrative to take foreigners into these places than it is to help our own kids here in Florida. For example, it's $158 for a foster kid, but it's $500 to $1,400 if someone's illegally here from a foreign country. And we want to make sure that those licenses are going to facilities that are helping people in Florida who need the help, because they do need the help, and we want to make sure we're there for those folks. So all in all, these are a robust series of proposals. I think we're going to get a lot of support in the legislature, but we have a responsibility to stand up for the rule of law. We have a responsibility to stand up for the Constitution, and we have a responsibility to stand up against an administration that has just decided they don't want to have a secure border. You don't get to make that decision. The laws of our country require us to enforce the law, and that's what needs to be done. So the lawsuit continues. Our other initiatives that we've done with my previous executive order continues, but then these changes, both in terms of the legislative changes and in terms of the additional funding, will put us in a great position to be able to continue to protect the people of Florida. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and I look forward to working with them when it becomes time to get this across the finish line. So we have a couple other folks going to come up and speak. Congressman Rutherford is up there in the swamp and dealing with this every day. I wish they could do a little bit better up there. It's not going too well, and hopefully there'll be some changes soon. But when you have all these problems with inflation and all this, for them to be printing another $2 trillion at this point, I don't understand that. The numbers that came out today for November was huge increase year over year from where we were. And this affects people every day in groceries and gas and all these things that really pinch people's budgets. And yet it seems like they're accelerating that rather than trying to ameliorate that. Anyways, John, come on up.
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, Governor, this is, what we're seeing is really the results of a one party, one rule for almost a year now. And, I have to tell you that as a sheriff, I don't say this lightly, but the Biden-Harris administration has blood on their hands. Because, and I say that for three reasons. Number one, what's going on at the southern border, everything that the governor just described is not ineptness, it's not a mistake, it's their policy. This is not a failed policy at the southern border. This is the Biden-Harris administration policy, what's taking place, first and foremost. Secondly, that policy is allowing gang members and criminal aliens to come across our border, and as we saw right here in Jacksonville, kill our citizens. And then third, the amount of fentanyl that they're allowing into this country now is a result of this policy, not a failed policy, their policy. For the first time in history, we saw over 100,000 people die from illicit drug use. Over 100,000 people in our country. That's unconscionable. Now in Congress, one of the things that we're working on is H.R. 1995, which is protecting our community from gang violence. And we are going to try to pass legislation that will prevent these gang members who are illegally entering our country from being able to get asylum, from being able to get temporary permanent status, TPS. They will be deportable if they are proven to be gang members. I have to tell you, I hope that other governors around the country come to understand the importance of protecting their constituents the way this governor has for the state of Florida. They've got to recognize, as this governor has recognized, Governor DeSantis understands the danger, the violence, the death that's being brought by this policy at the southern border. And so, Governor, I want to say thank you for protecting all of our constituents here in Florida, particularly Northeast Florida, and God bless you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, Mayor Lenny Curry.
Well, good morning, Governor. Thank you for being so engaged and diving so deep on this important issue. And I'm here today to say I stand with you with your proposed legislation and will do everything I can to make sure that it passes and is successful. I'd like to take a moment and talk about Francisco Javier Cuellar. Francisco was a 46-year-old father of 4 living right here in Jacksonville. He was a kind man. He cared deeply about his kids, but not just his own, any child in need. That's why he agreed to take in a Honduran immigrant who claimed he was 17 years old. He gave him food, shelter, and a job at their convenience store. But it was all a lie. You see, he wasn't 17. The man was 24 years old when he crossed our borders. He claimed to be an unaccompanied minor, a status that protected him from being immediately deported. This man now stands accused of murdering Francisco, his host father, in cold blood just weeks before moving in. I stand with you, Governor, that this tragic loss could have been prevented if our southern borders were more secure. While some may think this is a unique or extreme case, I'm not willing to take that chance. Like the governor, I want more information about who is on these flights coming into our city, many of them landing in the middle of the night. I want to know how these individuals are being vetted and how they're being screened. This is not about vilification, it's about verification.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Larry Keefe, Public Safety Czar.
First, I want to thank you, Governor, for your solid leadership in this fight, and we both know it's a fight. And I want to thank you for your work on this proposed, very important legislation. The Biden administration has ordered federal agents to stand down, to not do their duty, while Governor DeSantis is fighting to protect our sovereignty, to protect our families, and to deter those who are accomplices to this pipeline, and it is a human smuggling pipeline. It is the federal government's sworn duty to secure our border, to enforce federal immigration laws, and to protect Florida and the entire nation from illegal immigration. Their failure has opened our border to criminal cartels that smuggle migrants from South America, Central America, and from all over the world. The Mexican criminal cartels have custody and total control over these migrants on this journey. Many of them are what are called unaccompanied children, and they make this long, dangerous journey without their families. Too many of these unaccompanied children suffer horribly on this journey, and some die. Too many are abused by the criminal cartels and smugglers. And way too many descend into criminal sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and drug trafficking after they arrive in the United States. American kids are dying of drug overdoses in record-breaking numbers from pills laced with fentanyl. More than 90% of this fentanyl that is killing our kids crossed the Mexican border. We've heard today your local political leadership mention one particular adult criminal in this human smuggling pipeline who posed as an unaccompanied child to get further inside this country more rapidly. And he ended up here in Jacksonville. The Biden administration flew him to Jacksonville at taxpayer expense. He is now charged with murder for stabbing and killing a Jacksonville man. Federal law, the federal government, and the federal courts all prohibit states from enacting and enforcing our own immigration laws. And they prohibit us from ourselves detaining and deporting these illegal aliens. But even with these federal limits on our authority and our ability to protect ourselves, we will not submit. And Florida will not surrender its sovereignty. These new laws are going to help us shut down this human smuggling pipeline. And they are going to deter the criminals that cause these unaccompanied children to embark on this deadly journey. Thank you again, Governor, for leading us and supporting us in this fight.
All right, thank you. Okay, Mark Van Lowe, Jacksonville Aviation.
Thank you, Governor, for your continued support in taking on this issue. As an operator of 4 airports in the Jacksonville area, we are focused on providing a safe and secure environment for any aircraft and all of its passengers once they land. We first learned of these flights in June this year when an aircraft was parked in the middle of the night on a remote cargo apron. Our operations department had learned that the flight crew had already left for hotels that night, leaving the plane full of children with chaperones locked on board for 10 hours. It was 10 hours later that aircraft actually departed. On July 21st, a month later, we were able to participate with Health and Human Services on a Zoom call to discuss this program. We appreciate the Governor's hard work on this and also on Congressman Rutherford's work in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sheriff Williams.
Listen, I want to thank the governor for obviously coming back to Jacksonville today and as always standing up for public safety. His efforts have been unwavering in working to keep Florida safe and to support the men and women on the front lines who do that work every single day. And I think it's important for the people of Jacksonville and really all across our state to understand the concerns that we face and how this should matter to everybody. So the illegal immigrants, that have been brought into our communities are coming here with not only no official paperwork, but much worse, no record of who they are, no record of what country they come from. It's amazing. It's our job in law enforcement to keep communities safe, and that job's challenged when we have nothing more to work with than just the unknown. And so while I have all the confidence in the world that the men and women of JSO will stay vigilant in their work to keep our community safe, I can't deny I've got serious concerns for the fact that they have to carry out that work without all the information that's necessary, not only to keep our community safe, but to keep themselves safe. So, Governor, I want to thank you for your continued attention to this issue and for your continued support of law enforcement. Thank you.
The sad thing about this is that this is a crisis that has been created by the Biden administration. President Trump instituted a number of policies and it dramatically reduced the number of people that were coming across the border illegally. Most of the people that are coming are basically economic migrants. They are claiming asylum, but they don't qualify for asylum. And so President Trump's policy was, okay, if you're doing that, you remain in Mexico, we'll adjudicate. And they know at that point, they're not going to get a valid asylum claim to succeed. And so it really reduced the incentive to come. Well, when you revoke that policy, when you revoke the safe third-party agreements with the third-party countries, when you do all that, you are creating a huge influx. And the thing that was noticeable when we had our folks there, and it's still true today, was these are not Mexicans coming across the border. I mean, it was very few that were Mexicans. It was all these other countries across the world. I mean, there were people from South America, the Caribbean, Africa, the Middle East that were coming through that border because the message has been sent that, yeah, you just come to the border and you're fine. And think about it. They're going to impose travel restrictions. If you take a trip to the Bahamas or something, you got to do a test to be able to come back to your own country. People coming across the border, they just do what they want. And then Fauci was asked about some of these mandates about the border. He said, oh, that's a separate issue. We'll impose mandates on Americans, but yet the border's a separate issue and they get to live, they get to come here and not even follow the same rules that the average American would have to follow. So this is really nuts. So this is avoidable. This can be ameliorated. Of course, we want to see the reinstitution of the Remain in Mexico policy. They are under a court order to do it. I don't think that they've really done it. I think they're dragging their feet. Our lawsuit, we've already gotten some positive results out of it. Hopefully we'll be able to get over the hump and get some more. But in the meantime, we've got to be able to take action. We've got to be able to take steps to protect our folks. So that's what we're doing, and I think these are really strong steps. Unfortunately, we're limited in terms of what we, quote, can do. The states have tried, when federal governments failed in the past, to step in, do very reasonable things, and courts say, oh, no, it's the federal government's purview. Well, that would be fine if they were actually doing their job, but how is it their purview when then they don't do the job? And so I think states should be able to step into that void, and so that's what we're looking to do here with the state of Florida. I'd also just like to say, since we're here, the fire station, we were happy in our budget yesterday to really provide strong support for our first responders, including and especially law enforcement. But last year we were able to secure $1,000 bonus payments for every sworn law enforcement, fire rescue, and EMT in the state, and we put it in the budget again, and we want to do it for a second year in a row. So I think that that'll be really meaningful and it'll be important. And then we were also able to do a lot for state law enforcement. We're doing a 25% pay increase for members of state law enforcement agencies like FHP, FDLE, Fish and Wildlife. Very, very important. And then new hires, they're going to start out at a level that's 20% higher current. And then, of course, we did the $5,000 bonus payments for play. If you're in Seattle and you're getting treated poorly, they have an opening at JSO. You come down here. You got to be qualified. We want good people, but if you are, you got to be eligible for a $5,000 signing bonus right off the top. If you're a young person in Florida that wants to go into law enforcement for the first time, you get hired by one of our state or local agencies, you're eligible for a $5,000 bonus. That's a big deal, and I think the money's important. But I think what it says to folks in law enforcement and fire and first responders is that the state stands with you. We appreciate what you're doing, and we're going to put our money where our mouth is. And so I look forward to be able to enacting all those good policies here in the next couple of months. Okay, with that, I could take a couple questions. Yes, sir.
Have the 78 flights that you were talking about that came into Jacksonville, are they still coming?
No. So once this became a real big issue, there's not been a flight since. I think we did a press conference at one of the other, I think it's Cecil. So how many weeks has it been? I mean, it's been 6 weeks. Yeah, at least 6 weeks where there's not been any flights. And so we're happy with that. We obviously don't want to continue to see flights coming in. And again, if you had the other policy, there'd be no need to do any flights anywhere. And so we hope that that's the direction they're going. But yeah, no flights over at least the last 6 weeks.
Well, and then on that, you were talking about the sanctions against those that were involved with this company and all that. Can you give us any idea of the companies that you're talking about? Are we talking about the charter flights?
So there's a number. There's a list of a bunch of charter companies that have been involved, and then there's also ground transportation. That's a little bit more difficult to get your finger on sometimes because there are normal buses that come and go anyways. It's not like every bus, but these flights in the middle of the night, So those types of contractors, they're just going to be on notice that once you do the federal government and you're facilitating illegal migration and you're imposing burdens on Florida, you're forfeiting your right to have any relationship with state or local governments. And then, of course, we are going to do the restitution as well. And so I hope people will just look at that and say, you know what, that ain't worth it. I'd much rather be able to do business in Florida normally than to participate in something that's highly controversial. Obviously, it's something that's had devastating consequences to this community, and unfortunately, we'll likely continue to see those if these policies don't change.
Governor,
Yes, sir.
In the case of the man who's arrested for the murder of Francisco Cuellar, I think I heard that he was definitely on one of those flights.
Yes. So he had posed as a minor. So the flight had minors, and these flights there's a difference. Sometimes you'll have relatively young kids on these flights, and then sometimes you'll have a lot of people who when I was serving in Iraq, we consider like a 16 or 17-year-old Iraqi to be a military age male, and so they're technically minors in that respect, but you have people that are more advanced, and so he posed as a 17-year-old, was able to get on the flight, was obviously released locally, and then committed the murder. So it was illegal entry, but then also fraud in terms of saying this. But it goes back to the point of what Sheriff Williams was saying. You don't know who any of these folks are. There's no documentation. You don't necessarily know what country. Now, sometimes, I was down in Del Rio, you could see, there's obviously a difference between someone coming from Guatemala or someone coming from Haiti. You can kind of figure that out. But at the end of the day, you don't know. And you also have folks who have been in other countries. So maybe they're from one country, they left, they've been living in another country for years, but then they say, hey, you can come across the border, so now they're deciding to come to the United States. I'll tell you, though, it has destabilized some of these communities in different parts of Central America in particular, and my view would be, if they knew that this wasn't viable, much more likely to work and do things to help their own communities there. But when you're told, hey, just come across the border and you're fine, some people are doing that. It is, though, very hazardous. So there's a whole host of people coming across, but when you have a flight, to have very young children, you have people that are 6, 7, 8 years old, that is hazardous, that they would be going across the entire Central America, all into Mexico. It is, as Larry said, this is not working out well. Just think, as a father of young kids, I don't want my kids out of my sight. I would never allow something like that to happen. But you got a lot of bad things going on. The cartels are taking advantage of it. There's human smuggling, and it's just a really bad situation. So for us to be, as a country, basically facilitating that, that's a really, really bad policy. It is very hazardous to have somebody who's that young being illegally crossing international borders. That is just not a policy that we should want to entertain at all.
In the 6 weeks since the flight stopped coming in to Jacksonville, have you seen any change in cooperation from the Biden administration in your office? And in totality, does your office have any sense of how many individuals have been brought to the country?
So we don't have a sense overall. Now, we do know the certain number of flights here. We have a rough estimate about how many people would have been on the flights. So what has happened since? They have changed the policy, and when we're litigating against them, from notice to report to notice to appear, and that's a very positive movement. Now, they're fighting us on providing documentation in that case. And our view is we want to know why you're making these decisions, because this goes into administrative law and all this other stuff. And they've been very, very difficult, would you say, in terms of not providing anything in terms of that type of cooperation. And so in some respects, it's a litigation strategy, because what they're going to say is, well, we don't really even have a policy, so how could the state, be suing us on it? So I think they're trying to do a little end run. We hope the court doesn't accept that, because that would create some bad incentives. So we're at loggerheads on that case, and I think we'll continue to be. They're trying to get it dismissed. They did make the important concession, but I think ultimately push is going to have to come to shove on that. I do think having an adverse ruling, which they've already had for Remain in Mexico, that's very, very important, because that's a key to really shut off a lot of what we've seen in terms of the illegal migration across the southern border into Texas. So hopefully we will get more positive results in our lawsuit, and then we can see. But my sense is there's not going to be voluntary reappraisals of what they're doing. If they feel that they may be vulnerable legally, then I think they'd be more interested in maybe doing something. But I don't think it's going to be because all of a sudden they've had an epiphany and say, you know what, our policy hasn't worked. I think, as John said, yes, look, there is incompetence involved, because when you have people on a runway for 10 hours sitting there, that's not good. But a lot of it is intentional, and so you have what you have. So hopefully we'll win our case. These reforms hopefully will protect
Florida will disincentivize folks from wanting to facilitate these policies, and I think everybody will be better off as a result. Okay, thanks so much. Great to be here.
Once again, the governor of Florida laying the smackdown on the Biden administration. You have to kind of read in between the lines as to what the governor was saying, because certain things can be said directly and some things have to be said in a different way. 6 weeks, 0 flights. Since it was first announced publicly, 0 flights. How do you think that occurred? One second. Let me zoom out here so we can look at the state of Florida properly. There we go. Had it in 3D and underwater view. So you can tell in the comments section those who really don't like the topic the governor's talking about, because what they'll do is they'll pick a popular conspiracy theory amongst conservatives and they'll start to talk about it. So just be careful if you see anybody changing the subject, even if you kind of agree with it, it's actually a liberal. Pardon me. Posing. A liberal posing as a conservative in chat. This is what they do. They try to take something good, like what the governor's doing now, and distract from it. Talking about how they'll try to talk about the CIA or the FBI. They'll talk about how Biden's a clone. So just when you go through, when you're watching your videos for the day or you're watching anybody talk about this and you go into comment sections or chats, just be aware. If you see a chat getting hijacked into a different direction than what the video is about, it's a liberal. It's a liberal doing that. And if you engage, you're doing their work for them, because all they want to do is distract into 10 different directions and lose the main topic. That's why I delete the comments. So it's actually they don't, Denise, exactly right. They kind of do, Denise J. They find the most negative and destructive and largely unprovable conspiracy theories that circulate amongst conservatives, and then they try to blow it up. They try to make it a big deal. But this is another piece of evidence that Florida is going its own way. And once again, I would like to ask, and this is a rhetorical question, all of those states that through the 2000s and the Tea Party promoted themselves as patriotic, promoted themselves as the great places to be when shit hits the fan, like Tennessee and North Carolina and Arkansas and Missouri and all these other places. Where are their governors? Where are their patriots? You know where they are? They've crawled down into their little underground bunkers with their bottles of bottles of prescriptions, if you know what I mean. You see, they have their own little drug problems too. And they come out during the day and they pop their tin cans off hay bales. And they check their email. And then they promote their fear-based conspiracy theories. Then they crawl back down into their bunkers waiting for Jesus to come save them. And that's what they think patriotism is. That's what they think freed the colonies from the grip of England. That's all it took. Just hiding out in the bunkers. You know, even so, Jesus come. Most cowardice thing I've ever heard in my life. So, and of course, here comes Darren Pearson with this exact same, right on schedule. Here comes the hillbilly conspiracy theory. Florida ain't a good state. It's gonna be underwater soon. Yeehaw! Yeah, goodbye, Darren. So, anyway, but thank you for, by the way, as you leave, proving my point. This is what they do. And once it's pointed out, it's easy to see. Because this discussion, of course, is about immigration. You see, nobody's going to be underwater. Nobody's going to be underwater. It's not going to happen. Still waiting on the La Palma volcano tsunami coming to destroy Florida. You know, it's it's just ridiculous when people can't wrap their mind around, you know, the great destroyer isn't coming for them personally. They've got to make it up for other people. So, but thank you guys for being here and supporting the lives. Very, very much appreciate it, because there is a lot of good news. You know, there's a lot of good things to be excited about and be happy about, but we still got to be, you know, be vigilant. So, and then of course we get the why would I bother, Medicine Tribe? You have your mind made up. If you don't agree with me here, why would you be here? You see, the stand your ground thing is just fine. But sometimes you have to go on offense. And you have to be smart enough to do it. But to go on offense, you have to know what you're talking about. And that requires a certain level of intelligence and information gathering. And that's what our governor is doing. Being able to gather information, being able to put it together and sift out the garbage from the good stuff. You know the history of Tennessee? You're basing this on the history of Tennessee? I can tell you the history of Tennessee since the pandemic started. Their one strategy, hide. Run to the hills and hide and pop tin cans off hay bales. Well, that's true. So I don't even know why you're here. Thanks, from. So, I mean, the reason we do the lives here is so that we can have the governor's commentary and then we can discuss it afterwards. I mean, most people misunderstand. You know, speaking as someone who lives here and has lived here for quite some time, I can tell you this: the governor did not save Florida. The governor is a result of the people of Florida saving themselves. The state of Florida is far more conservative than the governor is. Let me say this again. The state of Florida is far more conservative than the governor is. The governor is the compromise. And that's why during the live, this guy right here, I'm circling way over here to the left, Lenny Curry, he's been a Democrat mayor of Jacksonville for years, and he's multiple times come out in defense of Governor DeSantis. Multiple times. There's another guy down in Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, when 60 Minutes came after the governor and tried to make it out as if he had some deal with Publix over the jab. Democrat down there of that city came out and said, no, sorry, the liberals are lying. The liberals are lying. And that Democrat came to his defense. Democrats all across the state have done this. And this is what they're terrified of being seen in the next governor's race and in 2022. And I said something, and I'm going to stand by it. We are no longer in Florida going to acknowledge the U.S. Constitution over the Florida Constitution. I'm going to say this again. We're going to acknowledge the Florida Constitution over the U.S. Constitution. Because if the U.S. Constitution prohibits us from controlling our borders and controlling our airspace, guess what? If federal courts will not rule in our favor and will rule in favor of the criminal Biden administration, then we will ignore the rulings of those courts. And that's what we'll do, de facto, in reality. So be prepared for that. And that's kind of the direction, if you look at the CNN coverage, that's what they're talking about. They're saying, Florida doesn't clearly see itself as part of the U.S. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. We do no longer truly see ourselves. We have allies that are in the United States, places like Alabama and South Carolina, Louisiana to some extent, Texas. Can't really say Georgia at the moment. But I'll be honest with you guys, it's coming. And this was going to be the topic of today's video. The main video. When it all falls apart, and it's going to fall apart, it's going to be put back a different way. And that way is going to be a different realignment than nobody saw. Many people do not understand how powerful Brazil is becoming on the world stage. And when the U.S. collapses, and it's going to, D.C., when I say the U.S., I mean D.C. When D.C. collapses and everything goes to hell, and this country falls into a state of open civil war, money's going to matter. Allies are going to matter. And right now, Florida has an ally in Brazil. D.C. does not. Let me say it again. Florida has an ally in Brazil. And President Bolsonaro. D.C. does not. I have mentioned that series Black Sails. Those of you who've watched it, watch what happens at the end. Watch what happens at the very end in the last seasons. Or the last season, I should say. It is a predictor of the way things are going. And trust me, people may not see it now. People may see Florida as just another state in the United States. We are very unique in the sense that many people from the world who have, quote unquote, visited the U.S. have really only visited Florida. Let me say this again. Many people who said, oh, I visited the U.S., have only visited one place in the U.S., and that's Florida. Because of the vast amount of tourism. A lot of people can't wrap their minds around this idea. That 60 million, that's right, 60 million unique visitors visit Orlando alone on an annual basis. That's 1 million people a week. 1 million people per week visit Orlando. So, exactly right, Shy. The governor is commander-in-chief of the state National Guard. The federal government or the Pentagon have no control and cannot mandate policy. Now imagine if you added in how many people visit Miami or how many people visit Tampa or, Naples Fort Myers, Pensacola, Panama City. You see, Kat, that's the whole point. Nobody cares about 2024. 2024 is irrelevant to the state of Florida. 2022, re-elect a new governor, which is going to be the same governor. And in 2025, we'll elect another governor. And in 2028. But 2024 is something that matters to anybody who gives a damn about Washington, D.C., and right now, nobody in Florida does. Nobody in Florida does. Chris Cola, I'll tell you this. Are you chained, literally chained to a tree right now? Because Chris Cola, if you're not chained to a tree or in prison at the moment, you can move to Florida. It just might be hard. It might be difficult. It might require choices you don't like. Right. I know. People get slaved to certain areas because of family, and believe me, I have family. And Kat, I'm not trying to pick on you. You've been one of my greatest supporters here, and I appreciate everything you say and everything you do. God bless you. Thank you for being here. But we have to get shaken. We have to shake ourselves out of this mindset. We have to shake ourselves out of this mindset. I have family. I have friends that still live up in the Midwest who are still trapped in this Midwestern mindset of this, oh, woe is me. Oh, poor us. Oh, we have to this or that or the other. Just, we have to hold on because Jesus is coming soon. That is not what Jesus said to do. How many times and in how many places in the Bible did he tell his people to leave? From the story of the Exodus to when he was, do you remember when Jesus was bringing together his disciples? I'm trying to remember which one it was that was in the funeral procession for a family member, and he said, "Let the dead bury the dead, come and follow me." It is a recurring theme in the Bible. Even Joseph and Mary, they picked up and moved. They went to Bethlehem. If you look in the Bible and you go through the Bible, how many Abraham had to sojourn into another country. How many different times, James, thank you, Medicine Try, I appreciate that. How many times in the Bible, come out of her, flee into the wilderness, exactly right. Physically, did he command people to move? And when people will look at the story of Jonah, when you run from God, you'll be brought back, one way or the other. And most of your families, New England, they like to visit me. I'll bet they do, Flowers. I will bet they do. You know, I've had an open door policy with some friends and a couple of very, very limited family members here. But, you know, Nick, I understand promises to moms. Believe me. I understand promises to moms. But, you know, I don't want to make it too personal about me, but believe me, I had some chains in my life that were in the forms of people that I had to break asunder, and it was not easy. There are a lot of liberals who brought their parents, older ones, down here to make sure that they were safe in their retirement. And now they are understanding, a lot of them, what safe really means. If you want your parents, your grandparents, in their old age, in their retirement to be safe, if you want to go on vacation, why do you think Florida is vacation central? What's the overriding theme of a vacation? The overriding theme of a vacation is get the hell away from normal life and go someplace where you can be happy enough to feel safe. Nobody comes to Orlando or to Universal or to Disney with any idea in their mind that they'll be in danger. Does anybody go to spring break thinking it's going to be dangerous? If there was even a hint that Florida and its vacation destinations were in any way, shape, or form more dangerous than where those people were coming from, they wouldn't come here. Why do you think people have stopped vacationing in California? People have stopped vacationing in California because it's too dangerous. It's just as beautiful. California, I was stationed out there. California, Daytona, you know what? Hold on. Mystery school. Daytona is, where'd your comment go? Daytona might be the one exception to this. And I totally agree. About Daytona. And I live just north of Daytona. I live 20 minutes away. But where I live is perfectly safe. Palm Coast, Florida is perfectly safe. Just for reference here. Let's see if I can do this here. Here's Daytona. And because of the biker crowd, yeah, the biker drug crowd, you're absolutely right. I would never recommend living in Daytona. But I live right up the road here in Palm Coast. And it's, unbelievably safe. Could literally not just sleep with the doors unlocked, you can sleep with the doors standing wide open here. And ain't nobody gonna bother you. So, and look, there are parts, I agree, of Orlando. Let's see if I can find Sanford. The Sanford region is, I believe it's south and east or something like this. Where's Sanford at? Here's Orlando International. Here it is, up here. It's on the north side. Sanford, maybe not the best. So, in the state of 22 million people, you're going to have some areas that are, But generally speaking, as a state, we are an incredibly, comparing apples to apples, far safer. We have 22 million people. New York has 19 million people. We are orders of magnitude way more safe. Way, way more safe than New York. And I would argue the same thing about California, who has double our population. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, Tom Anderson, California. California is beautiful. I was stationed out there. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. The missions and PCH. I was stationed in Monterey. So many beautiful things, but you would never catch me setting foot in California. You wouldn't actually catch me north of the Florida line. Not anytime soon. Not for any reason would I leave our republic. Because I personally don't trust that they aren't developing some type of an airborne jab, if you get my drift. Because they're already writing articles about how to do things behind people's back if they're not going to do it willingly. See, they've moved from try to convince people, try to coerce people, try to force people to now just do it without them knowing. Just do it without them knowing. And that's why like I said, I live in Flagler County. I rarely leave Flagler County for any reason. It would have to be something, maybe not an emergency, but it'd have to be pretty important for me to even leave this county. But to actually leave the state of Florida, I can't envision a reason. So, anyway, I don't want to pick on Appalachia because I know there's good people up there. But you guys, seriously, you're gonna have to step up. You're gonna have to step up. I mean, you've been talking the talk, speaking to all of Appalachia, everything from Springfield to, let's see, Greensboro and north of Atlanta. You guys need to be saying, okay, you know what? I think we've got the whole sight picture thing down. I think we have the whole handling of the ballistic weapons part down. You know, we've done it enough now for the last 15 flipping years that I think we can probably say that we could get the job done and start putting those away and start doing other things that aren't as fun. Meaning, get involved in local elections, get involved in local mayor's races, get involved in civics, and stop being so tolerant. Stop being so dang tolerant of guys that Asa Hutchinson needs to go in Arkansas if anybody's out there. He needs to go. I'm trying to remember the name. The governor of Missouri, he needs to go. The governor of Tennessee, he needs to go. It doesn't matter what they say. You have to get somebody who's going to do something. Well, you don't have to be, once again, Conquer Public Patriot. I appreciate the compliment. DeSantis is a result. DeSantis is a result. He's not a cause. He has done an incredibly good job of promoting and showcasing the values of the people of Florida. He's done an incredibly good job of promoting and showcasing and publicly stating the values of the people. But he doesn't give us our values. That's why we have a 2-to-1 majority in the State House. Some folks, I think, miss this. The Florida State House, it's a 2-to-1 majority, conservatives to liberals. The Senate, the Florida Senate, the 40-person Senate, it's 24-16. It's 60-40. And that was before Governor DeSantis. This is why Nikki Fried, who is, by the way, under federal indictment right now and is going to be standing trial for fraud, that's why they refer to it as broken. Because it is so wildly conservative in our government that it's not even that they don't get one moment to talk about their agenda. They don't get one moment to talk about their agenda. And I guess I should probably let you guys go have your day now that I look at the time. But trust me when I tell you, I would highly recommend learning Portuguese and Spanish sooner rather than later. Because there's going to come a day, speaking to people in Florida here, where we're going to have allies. And when they come and they are here defending our values, you're going to want to be able to speak to them. It's not a difficult language. It's a little tricky. But the Brazil-Florida connection and alliance cannot be overstated. So I will leave it there. God bless everyone. Have a wonderful day. I believe today's Friday, so I think it's it's the weekend. So have a wonderful weekend. I had lost track of what day it was. Once again, though, real quick, right here at the end, if you would, folks have started to show back up, and I really do appreciate it. There was a huge push right during last June with the whole Surfside thing, things I couldn't talk about specifically in public at YouTube. And, I uncovered that, and we covered 7 or 8 specific points. I think all of you now know exactly what happened at Surfside. But since that time, and it's gone out of the news and there's not really much more evidence about it, a lot of Johnny-come-latelys and fair-weather friends have left my Patreon. And I mean in droves. So, anyway, humbly, I would submit if you have $1, one singular dollar, not per week, not per day, not per video, per month, it would really, really help in giving me the ability to not have to deal with YouTube censorship. So, anyway, that's all I really want to say about it. It's what gives the Patriot Nurse and myself and other channels the incentive to put more content over there and less content here. It's just how, it works. I became a full-time YouTuber literally right about the time that it was actually right before Parkland. Let me put it that way. That's how long ago I made the choice to go back, and take the plunge and become a full-time YouTuber. It was right before Parkland. That's how long ago it was. And that's how much things have changed. So, Patriot Nurse may want to move to Florida ASAP. I think the only thing that's stopping Patriot Nurse from becoming a Florida resident is Florida doesn't have a deal where they recognize nursing licenses issued in other states. So I'm not sure if that's part of it or not, but I'm just thinking out loud here, maybe perhaps. And yes, Flowers, we absolutely do have the best shark teeth by far. By far. I actually, former mother-in-law, actually found a megalodon tooth up at Volano Beach, which is near St. Augustine. So, anyway, $1 at Patreon, whether it's her Patreon or my Patreon, it doesn't really matter. This is what will get people to take the gloves off, so to speak. If you want folks to start speaking plainly and not having to censor themselves, it's going to take a lot of people stepping up at places like Patreon and showing up and saying that we value, not only with our words, but with our money, what contributors like the Florida Maquis, the Patriot Nurse, Jennifer LaFontaine, I'm remiss a lot. I don't mention Jennifer LaFontaine as much as I should. I've had certain videos demonetized, personally. And I've had strikes, and I've had times where I couldn't post. And same thing with the Patriot Nurse. She's had certain videos demonetized, and she's had strikes and times when she couldn't post. But both my channel and the Patriot Nurse channel are still technically what they call monetized channels. Not true for Jennifer LaFontaine. That is not true for Jennifer LaFontaine. Jennifer LaFontaine had her entire channel lose its ability to monetize any videos at all. And she's got over 30,000 subscribers. So she's in far worse position than I am, Patriot Nurse is. A lot of channels are. It's annoying for me when I get a video demonetized. It's annoying when I have to sit through a strike, but she lost her ability. Thank you, Kat. Appreciate that. And she's got 3 kids. She's got a teenage daughter and a couple of boys. So believe me, and she's done her thing with selling the silver stuff and different things. And by the way, just in case any of you didn't know, Jennifer LaFontaine is also an ER nurse, a trained, licensed ER nurse, just like the Patriot Nurse is. I mean, they're literally no difference. No difference whatsoever. That, the Patriot Nurse has 472,000 subscribers and Jennifer LaFontaine has 30,000 and I have 132,000. It's just weird. Truly, because we aim, all 3 of us, I believe, at the same audience. At the exact same audience, the same group of people. So it's, I don't really think that my channel is 4 times better than Jennifer LaFontaine, even though I have 4 times the subscribers. I just don't think it is. Because it's, live streams. And if you look at, and I've brought this up, I mean, she has a lot of videos. I mean, a lot of videos on all sorts of topics. I mean, I'm just scrolling through here. I mean, you can go back years and years, and there's all sorts of videos. And she's former Navy. Trying to remember the ship. I think the ship that she was on was an oiler, if I'm not mistaken. So, it is what it is. And I mean, you guys probably know more about the Patriot Nurse than I do. But, the one thing I think the Patriot Nurse has going for her is that she's been on YouTube for, I think next year it's going to be 12 years. Which is a long, long, long time. So, anyway, but I will leave it there and let you guys get on with your day. But God bless. Thank you so much for support here. Support the Florida Maquis. We will be, of course, continuing the reading of the book, Dreams from Our Founding Fathers, First Principles in the Age of Obama. We have made it up in 6 videos. We have made it up to page 44. OG. I had to look up what OG meant a long time ago. Shows you how old I am, Flowers. Original gangster. So, but we will be continuing picking up at page 44. There's a playlist. It says Govt DeSantis at the Florida Maquis. Let's see here. Subscriptions. Show more. Here it is, Govt DeSantis. As you can see, part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, up to page 44. His book is almost impossible to find. Truly, it's almost impossible to find. And it's every copy I've seen has been a couple $100. So, anyway, but I'll leave it there. But today's video coming will have to do with Brazil. And just a warning, there might be girls in bikinis. So please avert your eyes, because as we know, a girl in a bikini at the beach is probably the worst thing ever and the most destructive force on the planet. So, maybe hide in a bunker and, cover your head and, and pray, because it might be the worst thing that you could ever see. And I'll leave it there. God bless. Have a happy Friday, and we will see you guys in a little bit.